Vishwanath, your video is not there.
Just a second, I'll just check it out.
Okay.
Okay, so how's everybody tonight?
Fine, how about you?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, fine.
Thanks for coming online.
Yeah. Yeah. One second, I'm just checking the question list. Oh. Wait.
I believe last time both of you are not there, right?
Yeah, Saleh was there. He was on audio
Yeah.
mode. This is
Okay.
Satish. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, Vishwanath.
Yeah, nice to meet
This
you.
is Natraj from Sri Lanka, and
From Sri Lanka.
this is Saleh from Singapore. This is yeah. Okay. One second, I'm just looking the questions.
Okay, before that, maybe we can do a test on the quality of the video first.
Yeah,
Quality,
sure.
or we will just check. Actually, this Google Hangout here will automatically post to YouTube. So I'll just check whether it's already posted to YouTube.
Yeah.
Yeah, George also said that he will join now. Just now, 1 second.
Okay. So, Ranga, it's better to send the link.
I've sent the link of
Yeah,
this one.
the YouTube link, I'll check.
Okay. Wait, I'll check the YouTube link.
Okay.
Okay, it's already there.
In the YouTube account, you
It's
can
it's
find it.
live actually. It's live.
It's
One
already,
second.
send us the link.
I'll send the link here.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
I've sent in the this is chat session only. You can see.
Yeah, it's working, man. Yeah, it's already in live. Yeah.
Vishwanath, Nataraj, we are waiting for George.
Sorry.
We are waiting for George.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, no problem. Oh, otherwise we can start now. You'll join with us later.
Okay.
Because yeah,
Yeah.
Vishwanath is waiting for us now. The second
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just close the others. And I think we have to start. 1 second. 1 second. Yeah, do you guys know how to open Notepad in Android? Notepad,
Sorry,
Notepad in Android.
that's a S note, sorry, note or something. We have the Samsung one.
Uh,
Yeah.
okay. I think George is also on. Let me send him
Okay.
an invite. Okay, he will join later maybe. Yeah, we'll start out. Okay.
Okay, we'll start.
Hi, hello, hello all. Welcome everyone. Uh, uh, we have Vishwanath Patil here, MD of IT 2.0. Currently, it's IT company. Um, he has done extensive research in agriculture domain and implementation of export system in crop insurance domain. He will be our domain expert for this question answer session. We have Saleh uh, and Natraj and myself, Sriranga. And George will be joining soon for this question answer session. Uh, Hello, Vishwanath. Hi, welcome. Thank you for
Hi.
your time again.
It's fine.
So, shall we start with the first question? Uh, Vishwanath, do you think there is a need of an expert system in the fruit cultivation or in general crop cultivation industry or domain?
Yeah, certainly I think so. There is need for such a system, especially for a country like ours, wherein you have many small farmers. That means the farm sizes are pretty small, as well as very few agricultural experts. So, in a sense, having such a system delivered to them easily, like which is able to solve their problems, that is get up to date knowledge as well as solve their present problems, will be a really handy tool to increase the
Okay.
productivity of their farms.
Okay. Okay. Satish, you are noting down the points which I wish not go down. You can note down the points if necessary. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. So the next question would be, what is the normal usage of an expert system in the field of agriculture today, and its future prospects?
Okay, if you ask me what are its normal usages, it's mainly used for solving problems related to a particular crop. Say, for example, you have a maize-based expert system, cotton-based expert system, some of the fruits-based expert system. So it will be a niche thing. Say, for example, one crop or one fruit at a time. Each expert system will be dedicated on. And majority of the expert systems which I have seen, like most of them focus either on one main thing, then surround the other things with it. Say, for example, disease diagnosis. The disease diagnosis for maize. Okay, so that will be the major part of the system. Whereas, you'll be having other peripheral activities like like what's the best price, where to sell, when to sow, and all those things. So that is the present, or what you can say, normal usage of an expert system. Okay. As well as there are other some usages as well, but this is the main thing which I felt. If you look at the future thing, say for example, if you want to know what are the future prospects of expert systems, the most important thing is we should be able to have dynamic knowledge bases.
Okay.
Presently, most of the systems which are in use, especially here in this area or what we have investigated, more or less the knowledge base is static. Although, you can update the knowledge base, okay, via some web reference and all, but still there should be some human who is intervening and he should again get that data from some other place. Now think about it, like in a large field like agriculture, in a large sector like agriculture, I mean, how are you able to collect that data? First of all, these people are not able to collect that data normally itself. So collecting that data, analyzing that data, and then updating that data, okay, on a regular basis is a very difficult job. So like if we are able to automate this process, okay, and keep the knowledge bases dynamic, okay,
Okay.
up to date, which might involve some other secondary systems like sensor based systems which are going to get you the data, as well as some other analyzers which are going to analyze the incoming data, and then like it's kind of AI, artificial intelligence, wherein you're moving from the field of expert system, like updating the knowledge base, like I feel that is an area where there is tremendous growth opportunities which are present.
Okay. So especially in a country where 70% of the GDP is based on agriculture, so I think since it's just a developing field, so in future it has a future prospect as you mentioned. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
yeah,
for
I
that.
believe it is 60 to 70% of the people in India are into the field of agriculture. Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct.
Vishwanath, I have one question.
Yeah, yeah, please.
You said about the dynamic systems, but without any intervenience of human, how you can ensure that how we can trust the systems? So if it is kind of Wikipedia, then everybody can update that knowledge, no? Then how we can trust that system?
Okay, very good question. Like a very interesting thing. Like we were working on such a thing recently. So what happens is when you're getting the data from, like, let's say, a sensor network or some other part of the network, like it's not directly that we are going to update it to the knowledge base. But the problem right now, what we are facing, what we came across when we met various agriculturists and all those people, was gathering of the data. That is challenge number one. Second is analyzing the data. Okay. Third is updating the data. Now, if
Okay,
gathering of the data, analysis of the data happens, okay, and like let's say we'll put it in a temporary, or like yeah, in a temporary format at a particular place, then we will ask experts just to review it, or else there is
okay,
one more way also, wherein like you can see the amount of changes. Say for example,
okay,
when we say the best temperature for growing a particular fruit would be from this to this, okay,
okay,
we will look at the deviations. Okay, if the deviations are minor enough and which can be validated, okay, fine, we can go ahead with that. But if the deviations are significantly different, only then we will refer to the expert.
okay,
Okay, so like we are
okay,
reducing the load on the expert by collecting the data, analyzing the data, and just showing him the results. Okay, at these like
okay,
input values, this was the change which happened. So then like he can just have a look and either say okay or no. So based on the
okay,
aggregate level of experts, like let's say we have domain experts on a particular crop, we'll ask 10 such people in 10 different regions, and if
okay,
most of them only agree, if they send like a positive response or acknowledgement for that, only then we will update it. So that way
okay,
we'll be able to reduce their load a lot. Because if we ask them to go through all this data, analyze it, and then update it, even the updation can be done automatically. Okay, only thing is we'll have an interaction with them. So you can just send a mail with the analysis snapshots with the graphs and all, and then just ask for their feedback, a 1 or 2 question feedback that they'll click and they'll just say okay, done. So that would
okay,
be a much more easier way of updating, because for a agriculturist or an expert, agricultural domain expert using computers, especially in India, those people, for them using computers is a big headache. So they'll try to avoid
okay,
it as much as possible. But
okay,
like not just in India, you can look at most of the emerging countries. It will be a problem. Okay, so like
okay,
how much it is possible for us to automate the entire process of doing it, or the entire system, that much easier and better it would be. That is what I feel.
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Krishna,
you.
for the clarification. Uh, Actually, agriculture is a very vast area. It is a most ancient profession, as well as it contains very diverse conditions, such as not natural, the induced deforestation. It includes from deforestation, which is a very major event, to the very sophisticated greenhouse agriculture. So, do you think is it feasible to implement agriculture or an expert system based on natural conditions alone, such as soil nature or quality, or wind, temperature, or rainfall? Or is there a need to use the artificial factors as well, such as fertilizers or innovative irrigation facilities, or the disease prevention measures which can be taken using different technology? So, to summarize my question would be: is it feasible to implement an expert system in agriculture domain based on solely on natural factors, or we have to also include the artificial factors?
Okay. So when you say natural factors, you are talking about the climatic conditions and the soil conditions. Although these are necessary, but these are not sufficient enough. We need to look at the prospects of using fertilizers. We need to look at the prospects of using irrigation facilities, as well as include relevant financial data also. Because the major idea for a farmer is why he's into farming is to make money. It's also kind of a business for him, so he's a businessman. Okay, so he's looking to maximize his profits. So we need to look at the financial part of it. We need to look into irrigation facilities. Say for example, again, if we come back to this place from where we are and where we have done the study, it's totally rain fed. This is a rain fed area where, like presently we are in Karnataka district, North Karnataka of our country. It's a rain fed area, so irrigation plays a very important role. So, like again, it depends on what is your target base, whom you are targeting, for which community or which country or which particular region you are doing. Say, for example, if you are doing it for a place which has sufficient water supply and all, then like things change. So, for which crop and for which area you are doing. So, all those things do really matter. Those conditions which you've told might be, okay to do, but it would really give it a punch, or give a push to your expert system if you'll consider other factors also, be it the fertilization of crops or the land, as well as the irrigation, because it will satisfy a lot of people. If you don't include that, then you'll be excluding some part of your audience, the farmers. So personally, if I'd be doing, I would try to include that.
Okay, okay. So, how important role the heuristic knowledge of cultivation or agricultural sciences in general plays an important role in designing, implementing, and usage of an expert system in this domain?
Okay. I believe that that is the most critical part, or the most critical factor. That is the core of your expert system, because after all, it's this experiential knowledge which gives you,
Okay,
which gives your expert system the soul. That's what differentiates your expert system from a simple database system. Okay, so the core part is capturing of this heuristic knowledge from the expert, a single expert or a multitude of experts. Okay, and then using that knowledge to provide solutions to your customers or to the people. In this case, the farmers. Okay, so that is the core of it. That's the heart. You need to capture the heuristic knowledge. Otherwise, most of the facts are freely available on internet. You can just Google it out and you'll get most of the facts. So there are two parts: the facts, which will be stored in your database, as well as the heuristic data, which will be stored in your knowledge base. So for creating this knowledge base, you need to have access to this knowledge from experts. That's the most critical part in building any expert system.
okay, okay. Thank you. Thank you for the explanation. Uh, I have one question regarding the natural factors. Based on natural factors such as soil, wind, like water, temperature, can we categorize some fruits, like the some fruits which require solely more water? Can we categorize these as water dependent fruits, and some fruits which are only dependent on the amount of nitrogen content in the soil? Can we categorize it as soil based fruits? So, like, if can we in general categorize or classify certain amount of fruits so that we can filter out, or we can specify, or do we have to consider some more things? so that we can group the fruits.
Okay. So again, if you want to classify the fruits based on the climatic conditions or some other natural factors, it would be better if you go for a combination of factors. Say, for example, a particular kind of a soil with X amount of water would be suitable for a particular crop or a particular fruit. So, at a level of humidity, some things will grow. Okay, so it would be better if you would go for a combination of factors. Most of the factors which you told are good enough, but if you include something like humidity, especially the humidity around those plants as well as the soil moisture, the moisture content in the atmosphere as well as the moisture content in the soil. Again, these are some factors when you consider like temperature and all. So like moisture, humidity, and all those sub factors you can consider. So it would be great if you would use these combination of factors rather than saying in water this grows, in the soil this one. So in this kind of a soil with this kind of a water levels, okay, these kind of temperatures, these kind of fruits are preferred. So you can go for a combination of that. So if you add something like humidity and soil moisture, that would be enough, I feel, for you to categorize most of the fruits.
Okay. Coming from the natural factors now, moving on to the artificial factors, how can the usage of fertilization, irrigation, and human labor and texture of the land, soil type, size and shape of the cultivation land can affect or can improve the yield or the fruit cultivation decision? Suppose, like, uh, suppose, yeah, from the artificial factors perspective, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, so I'll not classify all of these as artificial factors because the
Okay,
land as well as the size of the land are also natural factors to me.
okay, okay, yeah,
Okay, fine, not an issue. Okay, so if you consider some factors like fertilizers, okay, are
yeah,
fertilizers required? Okay.
mm,
Of course, the fertilizers are very essential to growth. There is hardly any modern agricultural practices, okay, or modern agricultural which is taking place which doesn't use fertilizers, be it from the most advanced economies to the most backward. Everybody uses fertilizers. Again, it's there's a huge potential for organic based cropping or organic based agriculture practices. So fertilizer must part in today's world, so you need to have it. So then again, irrigation, as we had just discussed in one of the previous points,
yeah,
irrigation is also certainly required because of the erratic rainfall which is happening. If you see, rains are coming at time when it should not be happening throughout the globe. This is a global phenomenon. US and Europe are going, US is going through the worst heat conditions, whereas in China, Philippines, and all, floods are happening. Okay, and at the
okay,
same time, rains in India are moved away by 2 months. Like a total of 2 months, it has moved back. So there are a lot of climatic conditions which are changing. So to balance out those factors, you require these steps, what you call as artificial factors, fertilization, irrigation, as well as supply of other stuffs, pesticides, insecticides. So these things are required to balance out the effects of nature. Okay, as well as when you talk about human labor.
yeah,
Okay, again, if we get back to our place, the field sizes are very small. That's why mechanization has never taken off in our country. So what we can do is, just a second.
okay,
So
sure,
since the field sizes are very small, labor is predominantly used. Okay.
okay,
So getting the labor at correct time matters a lot. From what we interacted and what we found out, the biggest problem which we are facing right now is the labor problem in our country. The dilemma here is we neither have fields which are large enough to go for mechanization, nor the labor is available at a competitive price. Forget about the price. Getting labor has become a big difficulty. Okay,
okay,
so getting the human labor at the correct price at the correct time is paramount.
okay,
as
Okay.
well
Okay.
as I believe you had something related to size and
Yeah,
shape
size and
of the
shape of the
land.
cultivation land. Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So size does matter, as we are just telling, like mechanization. Uh, Mechanization, it would be profitable only if you have a larger size land. So with land parcels, on an average, the land parcels are of 3 to 4 acres in India.
Okay.
It is not possible to go for mechanization. So again, the profitability factors will be less. So like it's quite difficult. So bigger the sizes, better mechanization. Like you can use expert systems as well as you can use other systems to augment the labor and increase the profitability factor from these things.
Okay.
Shape of the cultivation land, I'd just say, like it is okay. Like it is a factor, but not a significant factor, because like if you have a decent amount of land parcel, you can just go for some of these heavy duty earth movers, which can like level even a big piece of land as well. Okay, or
Okay.
else even if you have mountains or as well as slope-based land, you can go for step-based farming. So there are ways of doing it. So like shape of the land matters, but only when the slope gradient is very high and all. In such conditions, it will be difficult for cropping. That's what I feel.
Oh, okay. 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 Thanks, for the details. Now moving on to the next factor, the availability of water. How would
Uh,
you verify the availability of water in a certain area? Like, what is the minimum water quality required according to you? Like, based on your expert opinion, is there a relationship between the quality and quantity of water with the growth of fruits?
Uh, I do certainly believe that there is a linkage to the water availability. Okay,
Okay,
uh, because like the water availability affects a lot, especially in the early stages. Okay, so in the early stages, the water availability matters a lot to the growth of these plants. If you want to find out as to how the water is available, the easiest methods, like what we can say, thumb rule is look for areas which have rivers, canals, dams nearby. So like that will provide you with sufficient water resources very easily. uh, do not go for cropping into places like which are dry lands, where like you won't be able to dig up bore wells as well. There are certain pieces of land wherein they still try to carry out farming here in our region, totally dry lands. They are totally dependent on rain. So that's a rule of thumb which we use. Like it's much more easier. Okay. If you talk about the quality of the water, I per se believe that like river water, flowing water is better because it brings with its minerals as well as good soil with it. So usually, like most of the civilizations have happened across riverbeds itself, because that's the most fertile ground for any kind of growth. Whereas the water which you get from underground water reservoir is slightly thicker, in the sense, like it's not ideal for growth, but can be made. But at the
okay,
same time, if the like you need to look at the pH level of the water, the mineral contents of that particular water, especially when you dig up a bore well, you need to get it checked. Okay, so like you can say there is some linkage between the water quality, but like only at extreme levels you won't be able to farm when the water quality deteriorates by a lot.
okay, okay, okay. Thank you. Um, how much of investment is required for disease or insect prevention? Like, should such an investment be a major factor contributing to the yield of the fruits, or for the type of the fruits? Suppose apple, if you are growing apple or grapes, it requires higher maintenance level compared to the guava or the banana. So do you think that the investment factor required for disease or insect prevention would contribute to the yield of the fruits?
I believe it has some impact, but you cannot say that like it will be a major decision maker for me. Because when you see that like a particular fruit needs more maintenance or like higher levels of this one, the yield will also fetch you a better amount. So for a farmer, when I'm making a decision, I look at both input and output. So if the input is high and at the same time the output is higher, if I'm going to get more money by selling that particular fruit, then surely why not? Like go for that. Okay. And at the same time, the amount which you are going to put in for these insecticides, pesticides depends on from which region you are, because there are certain insects and pests which occur predominantly in a particular region based on your climatic conditions. Okay, as well as like which crop, which fruit you are growing. Okay, and what is the size of your farmland? Like again, the size comes into the picture, because the bigger the size, the bigger the affected area, the more amount you are going to spend. So there are like a set of variable factors which you need to consider. Okay, this would be an important criteria, but not something which is going to change what I'm going to do. Okay,
Okay.
at the same time, before like planting those fruit plants, what you can check is what are the predominant diseases which are happening in and around that particular area. So you can just go to nearby places, find out who all have put similar kind of plantations, ask them as to what all are the problems which they have faced, and if possible, try to treat the plants, those things when you are sowing itself. So take precautionary measures. Okay, so that like the effect of those things whenever they occur, the insects, the pests or something else, will be minimal. So that way you will be like it would be much better.
Okay. Thank you. Natraj, Saleh, George, do you have any questions or any further clarifications required for the domain part of the expert system? Thank you. Like I asked all my questions, and now I would like to check with you guys.
Hi Vishnath, I have one question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, that regarding that water availability. So I heard that that fruit taste is depend on that water availability. Is it true? Some fruits need some
Yeah, yeah.
dry.
Thing is, like, say for example, even if you're going for a mango tree, okay, if you're going for a mango tree, if you're getting a mango fruit, if you're providing fertilizer sufficiently and everything, and water is not provided, then what happens? The basic photosynthesis process, as well as all those things, go haywire. So at
Okay.
that time, the formation of the fruits, I mean, there will be certain deficiencies which
Yeah.
will creep into the plants itself. So like let's say the mango should be somewhat sweet, the pH levels and all those things. If you consider, acidic level should be less and it should be sweeter. But then what happens is inherently you have not supplied the main ingredient to the plant for it to carry its photosynthesis process. Then what happens is everything gets retarded. So like when you get that mango fruit, whenever 4 to 5 years down the line, it will not be giving you the what you can say optimum taste. So in that
Okay.
sense, the optimum yield also decreases. First, the yield decreases significantly. Okay.
Okay.
Then even the taste also it like it changes a little bit, because that is the main factor, right? Because fruit is just a byproduct of photosynthesis. So if the process
Okay.
itself is not happening properly, then like whatever result you're going to get out of it will not be optimum, or it'll what you consider it will not be good enough. That's what like what like we have understood when like we were thinking about having an irrigation facility. As to then like we also had some questions to those agriculturists, when we asked them as to what's the effect of water availability, how critical it is. So sometimes at least like if the water is not available during the early years, especially for fruit
Okay.
crops, during the early years, if water is not available, most of them like wither and die out. So even
Okay.
to that extent also, like it matters, the water availability.
Okay. and how the sunlight would we understand that photosynthesis is based on the sunlight. So apart from the very sophisticated greenhouse agriculture for normal fruit cultivation, how important do you think the sunlight and the temperature of the surrounding area would affect the crops or the fruits?
For normal, you are telling, right?
Yeah, normal fruit cultivation, like
Yeah.
the generic.
Again, sunlight is a very important component. As we all know, without sunlight, nothing happens. So, adequate amount of sunlight provided at correct intervals of time. Okay, say in the sense, when that particular process happens, when the fruit creation process is about to start, when the flowers are about to bloom, from that time onwards adequate amount of sunlight should be available. Okay, and at the same time all the factors matter, from temperature to wind to moisture. Each of them play a very critical role. Say for example, if the winds are quite high, then during the flowering stage itself, the flowers fall out from trees. So that time automatically the yield will decrease a lot. And at the same time, if the temperature is very high, it changes the moisture level. So whenever we talk about temperature, it's more about the moisture, the surrounding moisture which is there, which will help those leaves to carry out the photosynthesis process. The more the temperature, then the higher amount of water is absorbed through the leaves, so they have to carry out more photosynthesis. So this puts a strain on those plants. So that's why too much of heat also kills a plant, because water supply will reduce that time. So all of these factors are interlinked to one another. Say for example, if wind speed is high enough, it carries the moisture away from your plant. Okay. So these factors mix together to, each of the factor will affect the other in some way or the around. So that's why they say the ideal temperature is, the ideal sunlight is, the ideal humidity is. So if maintained around that, that's why each of these fruits is grown in a particular area, not everywhere. The soil, the temperature, the water, everything matters. So that's why you have certain things which can be grown only in tropical climates, some things which can be grown only in hilly regions where it's, the temperature is very cold. So apple can be grown only in places where it's quite cold. So each of these things matter a lot.
Okay, okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Coming to the temperature, currently, if we classify the temperature, can we quantify the temperature? Because the variation of temperature matters for fruit cultivation. So, if we can we quantify the temperature as suppose very low, low, medium, high, and very high? Like, although it is not possible to say, what are your thoughts on classification of temperature suppose for our calculation?
Okay, so in a crude way, what you can say is you can classify temperatures like that. As I was just telling you, in low to medium to low temperatures. Say for example, apples can be grown better. In medium temperature, say for something like mangoes can be grown better. So like that, at higher temperatures, there will be different types of fruits. So if you want to make a classification for building an expert system, it can be done if you specify some ranges as to what is this load, because you need to specify some temperature ranges, right? Even if you say low or medium or high, you need to specify. So with that kind of a
Okay,
classification, I believe it can be done.
okay. And the one more thing I wanted to check with you is the soil type. Currently, we have three factors. Like soil type can be acidic, basic, or neutral. So, and soil nature is good or it's not that good. So do you think we need to add some more factors in soil, so determining the level or quality of the soil, or only the pH level of a soil can help to determine whether a soil quality is good for a certain fruit or not?
No, certainly you need to add some more features into the soil quality. pH is just one small factor. So apart from that, the fertilization levels are again very important, the NPK levels as well as the other chemicals which are present. That is very important. The moisture holding capacity or the water holding capacity of the soil, again the type of soil, whether it is like sandy, loamy and all those things. Based on that, so if somebody tells you it's a sandy soil, then it will be more grainy, so like how much water it can hold. So all those factors will come automatically around it. So if you say clay soil will become very hard very soon. So the whatever moisture is left in that under sunlight, it will become hard enough, so it will not be porous enough for roots to grow. So if you just have something like classification of soil, it will be much more easier for a farmer to tell as to what kind of soil is there in his farmland. So based on that, you have to take in your software or in your application necessary steps, like like if it is a sandy soil, what are the common features of a sandy soil that will remain same wherever it is, or similar you can say. If not same, it will be similar. So then you have to calculate the moisture holding capacity, water holding capacity, how porous the soil is. So and like another thing which you can add is like the biodiversity present in the soil. Okay, the biodiversity, when you say the microorganisms and all those things. So like this, you'll need to consider some factors at least. I would prefer at least the type of soil would be better rather than going into very depth, because then you have to go for soil testing and all. It becomes very difficult, and the system would not be feasible at that point. Okay, so what we can consider is something like the type of soil. So sandy, loamy, as well as other kinds of soils you can make. You can just have a question like that, and based on that, you need to calculate the internal factors.
Okay, okay, sure, sure. Thank you, Vishnu, for the calculation. We will add the soil factors much. We'll do some research also.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's just a suggestion. Okay, it's
okay,
not necessary
Okay.
that you have to add. I just like thought that would make the system more robust.
okay. So actually, I have one more question. Like when you were doing your research on agriculture or in cultivation, crop cultivation in general, did you go to the actual farmers and ask the agricultural experts? Apart from that, did you find any online resources for research, like for getting to know more things? Would you recommend any particular online resources for reference?
See, apart from like meeting the agriculturists from agriculture universities and farmers and all those people, we had certain organizations, central level organizations, something like we had done it on cotton. So we have an organization called as CICR, which is a central nodal agency for all the cotton crop cultivation in India. Similarly, there will be like Ministry of Agriculture and all those things present in your place also, wherever you're building the system. So Ministry of Agriculture will be maintaining statistics as to what are the weather conditions, what are the soil conditions. So you'll get lot of data, as well as like what are the levels of the farmers as to how much they were able to input, what was the output. All that data will be available with government sources in one department or the other department. If you're able to get your hand on that, that would be really good, because apart from agriculturists and farmers, that data is very critical, which will help you to analyze and build the system as well as test your system using that data. So those things will be available online itself.
Okay,
Okay.
okay, okay,
So
sure. Yeah.
usually those things will be available online in different, like say for example, but if I'll tell you that the cotton crop which is present in India, CICR, it will not be of much use to you. Okay,
Yes.
so
Okay.
similarly, you need to find out relevant websites in your locality.
Okay. Okay. Sure. Yeah. 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 Thank you. Any more questions? Yes. Saleh, Natraj, and George.
Okay.
Um,
We can.
okay. Yeah. Then I think we got a lot of information related to fruit cultivation and agricultural sciences in general. Mostly related to the natural and artificial factors which we are trying to build on. Thank you, Vishwanath, for the question answer session. It was very helpful. I am sure we will have some more doubts or clarifications required from you in future. So we'll be contacting you if necessary. Uh, well, I would like to say thank you from on behalf of George, Saleh, Natraj, and myself. Thanks a lot.
All are
Thanks.
welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you guys, George,
Thank you. Yeah.
Saleh, Natraj, and Vishal for joining the question answer session. I will be
Okay.
ending the broadcast now, but we can be still be online. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.